Hello, Miss Winelander here, and I'm going to go through the Algebra 1B Unit 6 Lesson 5 quiz retake. So this is if on the Solving Rational Equations quiz, maybe you didn't earn the score that you wanted to or didn't show all the information you learned in your head here. So this is how you can earn a retake. So in this recording, I'm going to go through all the problems on the original quiz so you can find your error from the first time you solved it, or you can learn how to do it from the original spot. I'm also going to say the secret word. So remember, this secret word is the thing you need to pay attention to because you're going to type it in down below in the Google form. And that is how I'll know that you've watched the whole video, and then I'll send you the retake. All right, so the first question here. What is the coefficient of x in the division 18x cubed plus 12x squared minus 3x divided by 6x squared? So first, what's the question asking? It is asking for the coefficient of x. So we don't necessarily have to solve for everything. We just want to make sure we get to at least the x term. So there's always a few ways we can approach this. When I see it's just divided by one term, a monomial here, I think of each of these terms being divided by that. Because if you divide, it's dividing by every term. So you can kind of write it in this separate way here. Remember, again, we're looking for the coefficient of x. So, simplifying this first term, we have 18x cubed divided by 6x squared. So 18 divided by 6 is 3. X cubed divided by x squared is x. So, before we even simplify the rest, we already have the coefficient of x. It's 3. Now, if you were continuing to simplify the rest, maybe you didn't recognize that yet. 12 divided by 6 is 2. X squared divided by x squared is 1. So it's just 2. 3 divided by 6 is 1/2. X divided by x squared is either x to the negative 1, or you can think of that as x in the denominator. So that would be our final answer of what actually is this division problem, but the question is asking what's the coefficient of x. All right, for number 2, another division, we have 2x cubed minus x squared minus 24x plus 12. And all that's being divided by 2x minus 1. So I think of this as a long division. Since this is a binomial, there's two terms here. So with long division, you're thinking, what can we multiply this by in order to get to this first term? So 2x times what equals 2x squared? We already have the 2. We need 2 more x's, so x squared times 2x minus 1. So x squared is what we're going to multiply by. Sometimes I show my work over here on the side, so I can keep track of that. So x squared times 2x is 2x cubed. That's a good idea. That's what we wanted. X squared times negative 1 is negative x squared. So that's what we're going to write here, that we will subtract. And when we get that, we have 2x cubed minus 2x cubed is 0. Negative x squared minus negative x squared is 0. So what's left is negative 24x plus 12. When we think of the same idea, what can we multiply this by to get to this term that's left? Because remember, we're dividing, so 2x times negative 12 would get to negative 24x. So let's test that out. Negative 12 times 2x minus 1. Negative 12 times 2x, negative 24x, negative 12 times negative 1, positive 12. Oh, that's interesting. We've got the exact same thing, so when we subtract these, we're going to get to 0. So that means there's no remainder, and our final answer is x squared minus 12. Now, for number 3, it's just asking to simplify. We can't solve because there's no equals. So when we simplify, and it looks like a fraction here, think about how can we simplify the numerator, how can we simplify the denominator, and does that help us at all? So for 2a plus 2, the greatest common factor would be 2, so we'll factor that out. We get 2 times a plus 1. On the denominator, we have a squared minus 1. So you can think of that as 1 as being a, negative 1 as being c, so ac is negative 1. So we're looking for factors that multiply to negative 1 and add to b, which in this case is 0. So that would be negative 1 and 1. Or you could have recognized this as a special case and jumped right to a plus 1, a minus 1. Either way, you'll get to this factor, and you can recognize that you have both a plus 1 and a minus 1 on the numerator and denominator. So remember, when you have something divided by itself, it is 1. That means we have 2 over a minus 1 left. All right, for number 4, I asked, what is the undefined value of 3b squared plus 12b plus 4, all divided by b plus 4? So first, let's think, what are we asked in this problem? We're asked for the undefined value. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to solve for this. We just need to find, where is it undefined? So when you're dividing anything, where is it undefined? It's undefined when you divide by 0. You can't split things into 0 groups. So we can set the denominator equal to 0. So b plus 4 is equal to 0. And then it turns into a one-step equation. So inverse of adding 4 is subtracting 4. And we get b is equal to negative 4. So that is the undefined value. Now for question 5, we are multiplying, as it says. So we're just trying to simplify this by multiplying. Remember, when we multiply fractions, we multiply the denominators and the numerators. But it looks like there's a lot going on here. So rather than trying to multiply every term out, when I see a quadratic or see like a squared, I try to factor first and see if I can simplify before I do anything else. So over here with that x squared plus 8x plus 15, if we're trying to factor, we're trying to factor to 1 times 15. So we're trying to multiply to 15 and add to 8. So how we can do that is 3 and 5. So I would leave us with x plus 3 and x plus 5. X minus 4 can't be simplified any further. Our next term, we have x squared minus 16. It's another special case. Or you can do your table. We know you can, what's multiply to negative 16 and add to 0. That's 4 and negative 4. So x plus 4, x minus 4, 2x plus 6. Well, they both could be divided by 2, so it would leave us with x plus 3. So now that we factor this out, we can start recognizing that we have some terms in common on both the numerator and the denominator. Remember, when you take anything divided by itself, it's a 1. So that leaves us with x plus 5 times x plus 4, all divided by 2. Now frequently you'll see your answer written this way, and I believe that's what it was as a multiple choice question on your quiz. Sometimes they might ask you to redistribute and remultiply this back out as you practiced in Unit 3. You'll just kind of have to see and know what the next step is for the problem. For number 6, we're adding. Remember, when you add or subtract fractions, you're looking for a common denominator because you want to add or subtract pieces of the same size. So we have 3 over 2a plus 5 over 2a. That gives us 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 over 2a. For number 7, we're still adding. This time we're not given a common denominator, so we have to kind of make them look in the way so they have the common denominator. So 8 is like 8 over 1. So what would be the least common multiple of 1 and x plus 4? That would be x plus 4. So if we have 8 over 1, we can multiply x plus 4 to both the numerator and the denominator. So we have 8 times x, which is 8x. 8 times 4. So 8 times 2 is 16, 4, 32. 1 times anything is itself, so we have x plus 4. Here we have x minus 1 over x plus 4. Now just like that last example, now that we have a common denominator, we can add the numerators. So we have 8x plus 32 plus x minus 1 all over x plus 4. In the numerator, I see some like terms we can combine. We can combine 8x and x to get to 9x, and we can combine 32 and negative 1 to get to 31 over x plus 4. And I don't see any other factors in common with any of these terms. So that would be our final answer. All right, for number 8, we are subtracting. So it's the same idea as we've done the other ones. We have to make sure that you have the common denominator. Here, in order to recognize the common denominator, there's some squared terms here, some quadratic. So let's try to factor first to see if that helps us recognize what to do. So A is 1, C is -2, so AC is 1 times -2 or -2. So we're looking for pairs that multiply to -2 but add to -1. That could be -2 and 1. So our factor is going to be x minus 2 and x plus 1. So this helped me recognize that, well, what I can, the least common multiple of these two terms is x minus 2 times x plus 1. So this already has the x minus 2, so we can have the x plus 1. If you do it to the top, you gotta do it to the bottom, because anything divided by itself is 1, so really you're multiplying it by 1. You're just changing what it looks like, not what it is. So now we have x squared minus 1 all over x plus 1, x minus 2, doesn't matter the order. Now here we can multiply this back out, so we have x squared plus 1x minus 1x minus 1, and that's still over x minus 2, x plus 1. So we can keep simplifying here. Combining like terms, 1x minus 1x is 0, so we just have x squared minus 1. Now that we have a common denominator, we can subtract, so we have x squared minus 1. Remember, it's not just minus x squared minus 1. We're subtracting this whole part here. So you can kind of think of distributing the negative also. So it's subtract x squared, subtract -1, or add 1. Still got that common denominator. So when we combine like terms, x squared minus x squared is 0, -1 plus 1 is 0. So we have 0 over x plus 1 times x minus 2. Well, 0 divided by anything is 0, so our final answer is 0. Now for number 9, before we start solving this, today's secret word is important. So I saw a quote that says, if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. I try to think of that sometimes when I try to think of reasons why I do or do not do something. So today's secret word for this quiz retake is important. Make sure you write it in the Google form below. So when we're solving this, we're going to use the same ideas that we've been using before, except for now we have that equal sign there. There's an equation. So for adding fractions, we still want a common denominator. So what's the least common multiple between 3x, 3, and 2? Looks like 6x. There's only one x in each case. The common multiple of 3 and 2 is multiplying them by each other. 3 times 2 is 6. So 6x. So you can multiply everything by 6x in order to start simplifying here. So that leaves us with 6x times 10 over 3x and 6x times 4 over 3 and 6x times 7 plus x over 2x. Alright, so let's start simplifying here. You can either multiply the numerators and divide by the denominator, or see if you can simplify it before we even get there. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. X divided by x is 1, so we have 2 times 10, or 20. 6x times 4 divided by 3. Well, 6 divided by 3 is 2. 2 times 4 is 8, so we have our 8x. 6x times 7 plus x divided by 2x. Well, x divided by x is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we have 3 times 7 plus x. So if we were to simplify that, we have 3 times 7, which is 21, 3 times x, which is 3x. Now this is looking to something like we saw in semester A. So we're solving for x with variables on both sides. So let's get variables on just one side. So the inverse of adding 3x is subtracting 3x. Gives us to 20 plus 5x is equal to 21. We subtract 20 from both sides. 5x is equal to 1. Divide by 5. X is equal to 1/5. For number 10, this might be something that you've seen before. I know that this was talked about in 8th grade for most of you. So when you have a fraction equals another fraction here, a rational expression equals another rational expression with numerators and denominators, you can think of the cross products. So we know that x plus 12 times x plus 8 is equal to x times x plus 4. So now we can start simplifying. So x times x is x squared, x times 8 is 8x, 12 times x is 12x, 12 times 8 is 96. X times x is x squared, x times 4 is 4x. Let's combine our like terms here. So we have x squared plus 20x plus 96 equals x squared plus 4x. So let's try to get our x's all on the same side here so we can subtract x squared from both sides. That leaves us with 20x plus 96 equals 4x. Subtract 20x. So we can get 96 is equal to negative 16x divided by negative 16. That leaves us with x is equal to negative 6. For the last two, these are more word problems, more situations. You have to think about what is the question asking. For 11, it says, John walked 10 miles on Saturday. He walked twice as fast on the second 5 miles of his walk than he walked on the first 5 miles of his walk. Which expression represents the time he spent walking? Let x equal John's speed for the first half of the walk. So he's walking a total of 10 miles. He's kind of splitting it into two pieces, 5 miles each. Now this says x is equal to John's speed on the first half of his walk. So we know his speed is x, the first half. It says he walked twice as fast on the second. So his speed on the second half was twice as fast as the first, so twice as fast as x. So it would be 2x. Now what can we do with that information now that we have kind of a picture to go along with it? Well, it comes back to that distance formula. So distance equals rate times time. In this case, our rate's going to be our speed. So now that we kind of have an idea, let's think, what is exactly the question asking now that we have all the information on the page here? So it says, which expression represents the time he spent walking? So we want to know the time, so we got to solve for time here. So it would be distance divided by your speed is equal to your time. So we know the speed, we know the distance of each of these, 5 miles for each, so we can kind of substitute that in. So this first part here, the distance is 5 miles, the speed is x. So that second half there, the distance is another 5 miles, the speed is 2x. So we kind of are already making expressions for our picture here. So our total is going to be if we add both of those, the first half with the second half. So we've learned how to add fractions here. So we got to get a common denominator. So the least common multiple between x and 2x is 2x. So that would leave us with 2 times 5, which is 10. 2x plus 5 over 2x. 10 plus 5 is 15. So we have 15 divided by 2x. That can't get any simpler. So that's your final answer. For number 12, we're talking about Eddie can paint a wall in 3 hours. Dan can paint the same wall in 6 hours. If they work together, how many hours will it take Eddie and Dan to paint the wall? So Eddie can paint one wall every 3 hours. Dan can paint one wall every 6 hours. And we're going to add those up, and we want to know how many, if we have one wall, how many hours does it take? That's our unknown. In this problem, unlike 11, it doesn't define your unknown, so you can use any variable you want. My default is x. So now we have our equation here. Since we do have an equal sign, we can solve. So 1/3 plus 1/6 and x. So you can either add these fractions first and then come up with a common denominator, or you can come up with a common denominator right away. So I kind of think of it right away. So the least common multiple between 3, 6, and x is 6x, because 3 can multiply to 6x, so can 6, so can x. So that means we're going to multiply everything by 6x. So 6x times 1/3 plus 6x times 1/6 is equal to 6x times 1x. So we start simplifying. 6x times 1 divided by 3. 6x times 1 divided by 6. 6x times 1 divided by x. So 6x divided by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 6x divided by x. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, so we just have our x. 6x divided by x. X divided by x is 1, so we just have our 6. When we combine like terms, we get 3x is equal to 6, or x is equal to 2. And remember, our x represented how long it took Dan and Eddie to paint the wall, so it took 2 hours. So now that we went through every single question on the original quiz, you need to type the secret word in the Google form below. Once you fill out and submit this Google form, I'll send you a webmail with a retake quiz attached. You only have to do the problems that you missed the first time, so if you've already shown that you understand a concept, you don't have to show again that you understand the same concept. So you can open up your quiz from your gradebook to figure out what questions you missed the first time, so you can only answer those. If you have any questions after watching this video, definitely ask me or Mrs. Hool. Once you get that retake quiz, you're going to show all of your work for how to solve each of those questions that you needed to gain understanding of. Submit it back to me, and I'll update your grade. If you have any questions, please let me know.